What is up, everybody? Happy Saturday. If we are meeting for the first time, welcome to the 100 Fantasy Football channel. My name is Ivan Herrera, and the purpose of this YouTube channel is not just to give you the best analysis, but for us to connect as a community. I think that fantasy football is one of the things that could do so many wonderful things if we unite as one community that is so passionate to talk about all things fantasy. So today we have a wonderful show, but before we go any further, I would be highly appreciative and grateful if you hit that like button, as well as in case you ever want to know when I'm going live and when I upload, the best way to do so is to subscribe, hit that push notification button so that way you are aware of whenever I go live or drop a new video. I drop at least one video once a week. I go live on Saturdays, and of course I do uploads as well on Sundays, so that way you are prepared. But I'm really excited for today. It's Saturday. I love doing this. This is literally one of my favorite things to do out of the week. And of course, let's go ahead and get into the show breakdown so that way you can see what we have in store for you today. So here's the thing. We're going to be going over some injury news, some unfortunate things that are taking place. We're going to go also over some of the week 4 players that I love going into week 4. We're also going to go over my bold prediction of the week. I like to go over one particular player that I think will outperform his projections, so I like to do that as well. And then we're gonna go over something for those of you that are 0-3. I have a special message for you, so that way you can still find hope, still find encouragement, knowing that, you know what, it's a long season. But before I go any further, we'll go over that a little bit later. And of course, I'm gonna open up the behind the scenes a bit, so you can see what I have going on in the 100 league. You can see the upcoming matchups, and that way the guys that are tuning in and that are in that league can see what I think will go down beginning tomorrow on Sunday as we continue on to week 4. So with that, let's go ahead and get to the first part of the show, and that is going to be the notable injuries that we have going into week 4. So the injuries going into week 4 aren't pretty. For the Tennessee Titans, they are going to be without their 2 wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. So the thing is, the Titans have a really favorable matchup going up against the New York Jets, so expect a lot of Derrick Henry. For those of you that have been tuning in for a while, you know that I've been a little down on Derrick Henry going into this season. Thus far, he's actually proved me wrong, and I think that he's going to continue to do so in week 4 going up against the Jets. So I believe that you're going to see a lot of Derrick Henry. There isn't too many pass catchers that get me excited in Tennessee, so expect a lot of Derrick Henry in week 4. Now, unfortunately for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're going to be without their tight end Rob Gronkowski, who's had a phenomenal season so far in 2021, but he is not going to be able to make his homecoming return to New England. And you know what? That's a bummer, because I really wanted to see Rob Gronkowski do the Gronk spike in New England, in Tampa Bay, with Tom Brady, of course, as his quarterback, but we're not going to be able to see that, unfortunately. But we, of course, sticking to New England, we did, of course, find out earlier in the week that running back James White was going to be out for the remainder of the season. So be sure to keep an eye out in that backfield. Even though I'm still a little bit meh on Damian Harris, I still think there's still a lot of value there to be had. Keep an eye out as well as what this will do for wide receiver Jacoby Myers, who should see a spike in his volume as well as his target share. So it'll be interesting to see how this will play out, considering that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers aren't necessarily the most scariest secondary. So I expect a pretty good game for Jacoby Myers, but keep an eye out as well for Nelson Aguilar. This advice is exclusively for those of you that are in deep leagues where players like these would probably be someone that you would consider starting in your flex spot, or heck, even maybe in your wide receiver slot. And the last piece of news when it comes to injuries, we also just found out today that quarterback for the Chicago Bears, Andy Dalton, is going to be out, which means quarterback Justin Fields will have a second opportunity to redeem himself after a horrid debut in the NFL. And I think that this will be a better matchup for him, but we'll get into that a little bit later as we dive into now the players that I love going into week 4. And of course, as always, if you're just tuning in right now, be sure to hit that like button as you're tuning in. I would really appreciate that. And of course, send over your questions. I will, at the very end of this video, do a live Q&A, so then that way we can get you prepared. And just to quickly recap about what this channel is all about, I'm all about community. I love connecting fantasy football and people together. So be sure to put in your questions. I would love to address them. But let's go ahead and go into the players that I love going into week number 4. And the first one is going to be the man himself, Odell Beckham Jr. So he had a phenomenal debut in week number 2. No, rather week number 3. I'm forgetting my weeks here. But in week 3, Odell Beckham had a solid return, being that he was now going to be the lone wide receiver there with Jarvis Landry on the IR. And we have another great matchup. The stats that he's going up against cornerback Bashaud Breeland, who's allowed the second most fantasy football points to wide receivers thus far. And Minnesota as a whole has allowed the 4th most points to the wide receiver as well. So be sure to keep an eye on Odell Beckham Jr., who I think will have a phenomenal game. Currently, Odell Beckham Jr. in his debut in week 3, he was on the perimeter 83% of the time, which is where Breeland usually lines up as well. So be sure to see Odell Beckham really take advantage of that matchup and have a phenomenal week number 4. The next player that I'm going to be a little high on, and this may be a little homerism, only because I've been bummed out with how Allen Robinson's been doing thus far, and I do have him in a couple leagues. I've been high on the talent for a while now, and I think that it's going to be really hard for me to see him go through another struggling week. So I'm really hopeful, and I'm really optimistic that Allen Robinson will turn things around. And listen, I think that the matchup versus the Detroit Lions serves as a get-right game for Allen Robinson. Look, Detroit is dead last when it comes to yards per attempt. They're currently averaging 10.3 to their opponents. And the thing is, despite the slow start for Allen Robinson, he is currently seeing a 26% target share, which is one of the best in the league. So I expect that volume as well as the advantageous matchup to serve well for Allen Robinson in week 4, who I will, speak into existence, will have a bounce back game to really show you why you invested in the value that you got out of Allen Robinson. So expect a bounce back game for Allen Robinson in week number 4. Now, the next player I'm going to go with is going to be Dawson Knox. So this isn't a really popular player, especially because tight ends for the most part don't necessarily bring you a lot of value outside of those top 6 to 7 guys that you see in the league. But I think that Dawson Knox should be someone that could make some noise in week 4, considering that he's going up against Houston, one of the bottom 4 defenses when it comes to defending the tight end in fantasy football. And I think also the availability that he currently has right now, he's only rostered in 18% of leagues leagues right now, according to ESPN. And I think that the matchup, as well as, you know what, if you're looking for a dart throw, considering that there may be some injuries, like for example, if you are the Gronkowski owner and Knox so happens to be available on waivers, make a move on him. See if he can go ahead and add some value for you, considering that he has a great matchup. And I loved what I saw out of Buffalo in week number 3. So I believe that they were going to go ahead and turn it around. And I believe that Dawson Knox will go ahead and have a phenomenal game for you if you go ahead and go with him as your tight end for week number 4. Now, the next thing I want to get into really quick, and I don't have a graphic for it, but I do want to go over some players that have been a disappointment so far early in the season and which ones have been great value for you. So, for instance, I want to start it off real quick with Zack Moss, and I think that Zack Moss has been absolutely phenomenal considering his ADP. Look, hear me out. The guy was 109 overall in ADP going into the drafts, and I believe that right now we're seeing him really bring a lot of value considering that he was a healthy scratch in week 1, which brought a lot of concerns. Come to find out, injury had to do with some of that, but in the 2 games that he's been there, he's had double-digit touches in both of those games. He's averaging double digits. Currently, he's averaging 16.8 points per game in PPR. He also has 10 red zone touches in those 2 games. So you're seeing that he's not only highly involved in the offense, but he's also getting them close to the goal line, which is where running backs make a lot of their points, considering that if he scores touchdowns, he gets, of course, 6 points in most settings. But the point is, I love the fact that he is really doing well, considering he was one of those late draft picks in the fantasy football drafts. Now, the next person that I'm a little bit skeptical on, but I'm also hoping good things for. And again, I have him in I think 5 leagues, and I made a video about how happy I was about him going into the season, and that's running back Trey Sermon out of the San Francisco 49ers. I get it. If you're worried, I'm there with you. Am I panicking? Not yet. And here's the thing. Look, if Elijah Mitchell is to miss week 4, I believe that Trey Sermon has another opportunity to show the value as to why you took him where you took him in drafts. He was somewhere around that 5th to 6th round range. I got him in the 5th round in one league, and I got him before Chase Edmonds, which now looking back at it, kind of have a little bit of remorse on, but I'm still hopeful that this is the long game, right? Because I got Trey Sermon in a couple of keeper leagues because I thought not only is the talent there, I love the system that he's in, and I believe that both of those things will bode well for him overall. He's one of those players that I knew when I was drafting he wasn't going to return on investment right away, but I wanted to at least see some glimpses, so then that way, come at the end of the season, we would hope that we would pay out on our investment and have some phenomenal production. So far, that hasn't been the case, but listen, when he was the number 1 guy last week versus Green Bay, he led the 49ers in complete touches as well as snaps in week 3. He also did get a score, which of course bailed you out if you started him. But I love the matchup going up against the Seattle Seahawks in week number 4. They actually currently right now in 2021 give up the most points to running backs in fantasy football. So I believe that if you have Trey Sermon, don't hit the panic button just yet. There's still a lot of good opportunities for him, especially if Elijah Mitchell is to miss week 4. I would hope to see a big game from Trey Sermon to hopefully get you from panicking to now happy with you going with him on your roster. Now, the next 2 quarterbacks I want to go over really quick are going to be quarterback Jalen Hurts for my beloved Philadelphia Eagles, and one of my favorite players of all time, the GOAT, Tom Brady. Both of these guys have been absolutely phenomenal. Jalen Hurts currently right now is the number 5 overall quarterback in fantasy, with Tom Brady being in the number 1 spot. And it's pretty amazing that Tom Brady is in the number 1 spot. I mean, he was currently in, I think his ADP on average was between the 7th to 8th round. And I believe that return on an investment has been phenomenal, especially because I always tell you guys, do not invest in quarterback early. There's still so much value that you can get later on. And Tom Brady is one prime example of that, including Matthew Stafford, who I'm not going to get into, but I'll get into him. I'll go over his value later on into another video. But the point is, Brady has shown time and time again that his value is more than real. This isn't a fluke. He went up against the Rams last week and put up 28 plus points. And I believe that he is just continuing to solidify the argument of how he's matchup proof. Jalen Hurts, on the other side, who had a very sloppy game on Monday Night Football, still showed you that despite the ugly game, he still had a great day for fantasy football. So his floor is really, really high, considering that he has phenomenal rushing ability, which always bodes well in fantasy football. So I believe that if you have Jalen Hurts, you have Tom Brady, you're probably invested in those guys a little bit later compared to where most quarterbacks went in the draft. And these guys are phenomenal people that have brought you a lot of value. And I hope that they brought you value in your seasons as well. Now we're going to get into one of my favorite segments, and that is going to be bold predictions, where I now give you a kind of like shot in the dark player that that isn't probably used in most lineups right now, but I think we'll have a phenomenal week because of the matchup, because of the opportunity. So with that, let's go ahead and get into bold predictions.
The bold strategy, Todd. Let's see if it pays off for him.
So my bold prediction for week number 4 is going to be the Washington football team's quarterback, Taylor Heinicke. So I believe that Taylor Heinicke isn't someone that you probably have right now on your roster, but this is more so if you're looking for a dart throw, if you have maybe an injury that you're looking to bounce back from, or if maybe you are in a deeper league like a super flex or a 2-quarterback league. I would highly suggest that you take Taylor Heinicke as your starting quarterback for one of those formats because of the matchup. He's going up against the Atlanta Falcons. They have given up the most points. They are in the bottom 4 of most fantasy football points allowed to the quarterback this season. And I believe that Taylor Heinicke will also will get a lot of value because he has one of his elite weapons back, and that is wide receiver Curtis Samuel, who began the season banged up. And I think that now with Atlanta having to deal with not only Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson there in the backfield, Logan Thomas as the tight end. Now you have Curtis Samuel. It's going to open up the complete playbook for Heinicke, who hasn't been doing too bad, and I think will have a phenomenal week. So here's my prediction for Taylor Heinicke in week 4, and that is that he's going to put up 327 yards in the air for 3 touchdowns, and may even surprise us by getting 5 rushes for 45 yards and another score as well. So again, this is a bold prediction, and I believe that Taylor Heinicke will go bonkers off Atlanta, who's given up already so many big performances, including Jalen Hurts in week 1. Now with that, we're going to go ahead and get to one of my favorite parts of the video, and we are going to do a quick recap of the 100 league and what we're looking for and where we're looking at so far into the season. But let me pull up really quick this, and here we go. Okay, cool. So for those of you that don't know, this is my home league. It's the 100 League. I've now been running it for about 3 years now, and it's a really fun, engaging league. It's PPR, 12 teams, 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 2 flex, 1 defense, 1 kicker, and 5 bench spots. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly go over the matchups, and this one in week 3 is going to be, rather in week 4 is going to be a pretty good one. So we have myself, El Kamish, going up against King Tut's Hareem, which is Jimmy, who got off to a hot start to the season. He's 2-1. I myself am 2-1 as well. And I think it's going to be fun to see us go up against one another, considering that we have 2 elite quarterbacks as our starters. I have Kyler Murray. He has Patrick Mahomes. And I'm going to be trotting out Chuba Hubbard, which is someone that I'm sure Jimmy wishes he had. So it's going to be phenomenal to see how this is going to play out. Currently, right now, I already had Joe Mixon play for me on Thursday versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I got Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, Robert Tonyan, Austin Eckler, Tim Patrick, the Broncos defense, as well as Greg Joseph. Whereas with Jimmy, he has Darrell Henderson, Ty Johnson, Mike Evans, Adam Thielen, Noah Fant, Deebo Samuel, David Njoku, the Buccaneers defense, and Brandon McManus. Now, I believe that with the injuries that we're seeing right now with Jimmy, with the unfortunate injury with Christian McCaffrey, he was already rolled out for week 4. I think that this bodes well for me to have a phenomenal week. I like my matchup with Terry McLaurin going up against the Atlanta Falcons. I believe he will have a big game, which becomes the X factor for me, and I believe I'll get the victory in this one. But I've always said, too, I'm never going to predict that I'm going to lose. So last week I said I was going to win. Alex beat me, gave me my first loss. So there's that. Good job, Alex. Next one we have is going to be Jordan, who is 1-2, going up against Jeremy, who also is 1-2. So we will hopefully we will get someone that will break even to 500, and unfortunately someone that will be 1-3. So really quick, we're going to scan through the roster for Jordan. He has Russell Wilson, Alvin Kamara as his running back, as well as David Montgomery. For his wide receivers, he has Will Fuller. He has Nick Westbrook, Ikeen. As for his tight end, he has George Kittle. His flex spots will have Josh Jacobs and Leonard Fournette, and he also will have the Steelers defense as well as Young Ho Kwo as his kicker. For Jeremy, he's going to have Tom Brady going along with Derrick Henry and Chris Carson. His wide receivers will be Juju Smith-Schuster as well as Marvin Jones. His tight end will be Logan Thomas. And his two flex positions will consist of Miles Sanders and Odell Beckham Jr. with Cowboys defense as well as Tyler Bass as his kicker. So looking at this at face value, it's funny because both of these guys have some pretty strong running backs. They have of course, Jordan has Alvin Kamara. I love the favorable matchup for Tom Brady going up against New England. I think that Derrick Henry is going to be the one that will be the X factor and will essentially put Jeremy over the top, because you already have Julio Jones as well as Antonio Brown out for week number 4, and I believe that Derrick Henry is going to be a monster. I also think that Juju Smith-Schuster may also have a solid game, considering that Chase Claypool was ruled out already for week 4 going up against the Green Bay Packers. So I expect big things for Juju Smith-Schuster. And I believe that also Miles Sanders may also get a bounce back game, considering that one of the main Achilles heels for Kansas City in their defense is defending the run. So I believe that Miles Sanders, who only had 3 touches in the Monday Night Football game versus the Cowboys, will have a solid game. And it makes it easy for me to go with Jeremy taking the win in week 4 going up against Jordan. So now next matchup will be Howard as well as Danny. Howard is 2-1. He was actually the comeback player of the year last year after having a abysmal year the year prior, but he's turned it around ever since. Has off to a strong start again in this season. He's 2-1 going up against Danny, who's 1-2. Howard has Jalen Hurts as his quarterback. His 2 running backs are Saquon Barkley and Antonio Gibson. For his wide receivers, he has Robert Woods as well as Cortland Sutton. His tight end is Mark Andrews. He has Chris Godwin and Mike Williams as his flex. And then he has the Saints defense as well as Jason Sanders as his kicker. For Danny, he has Lamar Jackson as his quarterback. For his running backs, he has Nick Chubb and James Robinson. And for his wide receivers, he has Allen Robinson as well as Michael Pittman Jr. His tight end, he has Travis Kelce. And his 2 flex spots consist of Chase Edmonds and Cole Beasley with the 49ers defense as well as Ryan Suckup as his kicker. Now, just looking at this matchup, I'm a little bit skeptical about what will happen with Saquon Barkley, who is going up against a very stingy New Orleans defense. They have done such a phenomenal job thus far keeping running backs below 55 yards within the first 3 weeks. I believe that may continue for Saquon Barkley, as even though he did have a pretty good game in week number 3, I'm a little bit concerned about where Robert Woods has been thus far through 3 weeks, but I believe that defenses will begin to key in on Cooper Kupp, which will open things up for Robert Woods, who is due for a phenomenal game. He's a really reliable wide receiver, and I believe that the talent is still there. So I'm not panicking on Robert Woods, and I believe that going up against Arizona, who is undefeated, will have a bounce back game in week number 4. Now, just looking at this, of course, we can also look that Mike Williams has been one of the more phenomenal surprises in the seasons thus far. This is going to be a tough one because I also love Danny's roster. He has Nick Chubb and James Robinson, who already got him off to a really good start. But if I had to pick one, I am going to go with my gut here, and that is Danny. I believe that Danny will go ahead and get the win, being that he has Allen Robinson going up against Detroit, which I already went over. Michael Pittman Jr. does have a tough matchup going up against the Dolphins, but I think Travis Kelce as well as Cole Beasley will be able to really add a lot of value for him and get him the win in week number 4, making them both 2-2 come Tuesday morning. Now, next one we have German, Los Bichos going up against Team Collins. Another matchup where we have 1 and 2 players going at it. So someone's going to break to the 500 mark on Tuesday. So let's go ahead and see what the rosters look like. We have Justin Herbert as the quarterback for German, and his two running backs are Damian Harris and Cordell Patterson. His wide receivers are Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs. Tyler Higbee as his tight end, Brandon Ayuk and Henry Ruggs as his two flex spots. He has the Browns defense as well as Jason Myers. For Alex, he has Derek Carr. For his running backs, he has Mike Davis and Myles Gaskin. For his wide receivers, he has Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf. For his tight end, he has Jared Cook, and his two flex spots consist of Calvin Ridley and Jamar Chase, and then he has the Bengals defense and Justin Tucker as his kicker. So this is a tough one as well. Both of these guys are actually slated to have pretty good weeks. We have Alex currently projected to get 133 points versus German's 123. The main weakness that we see here for German is his running backs with Damian Harris and Cordell Patterson. I don't like the matchup for Damian Harris going up against Tampa Bay. So I'm going to go ahead and give the game over to Alex, who I think has a much more favorable matchup across the board. I think that he will go ahead and get the win and end up breaking to 2-2. Keep an eye out for Jared Cook, who I know is going up against the Raiders, who have been surprisingly doing well, but one of the weaknesses has been defending the tight end. So keep an eye out for Jared Cook as the X factor. Jamar Chase has already given Alex a pretty steady start with already 13 points, but I'm a little bit nervous about the combo that German has with Damian Harris and Cordell Patterson, along with this flex spot with having Henry Ruggs. So I give the nod and the win over to Alex in week number 4. Two more matchups and we're done here. The next one we have is David, Raider Nation, going up against The Last Dance. Another matchup where we have 2 1-2 players going up against one another. I think we have 3 of those actually. For this week. But for David, he's going to be trotting out Dak Prescott. He has Aaron Jones as well as Naheem Hines as his 2 running backs. His wide receivers are going to be DeAndre Hopkins and Amari Cooper. His tight end is Darren Waller. His 2 flex spots are Marquise Callaway and Hunter Renfrow. He has the Rams defense, and he's going to round it out with Daniel Carlson as his kicker. Now for Eddie, he has Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. He has Dalvin Cook and Kareem Hunt as his 2 running backs. For wide receiver, he's going to be having Keenan Allen and CD Lamb. His tight end is going to be Kyle Pitts, and his 2 flex spots are going to be Tyler Lockett and Christian Kirk. And his defense is going to be the Tennessee Titans, and he's going to round it out with Harrison Butker as his kicker. So initial thing, little red flags are already Naheem Hines as a starting running back. Kind of shows the depletion that David has at the running back position. So I was looking at his bench to see if he had like some kind of injury or something as to why he's so depleted at running back. But okay, next one we have here, Christian Kirk for Eddie. Why isn't he going with, the Rams defense for Christian Kirk, Marquise Brown, going up against Denver. That's a pretty good secondary. Surprisingly pretty good defense too this season. I mean, we knew that they were good, so it's not too surprising. Wow, okay, but interesting option. But okay, I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and go with Eddie getting this one. I like the teams set up right now. I think that I know Carolina's going to be a tough matchup for CeeDee Lamb, but I like Keenan Allen in that game versus the Raiders. I also like Tyler Lockett going up against San Francisco, who is prone to having huge games. Same goes for Dalvin Cook. Even though the Cleveland Browns are a formidable defense, I believe that the run defense is middle of the pack, and I believe that will be the X factor for Eddie getting the win over David, who will, as I'm projecting, will be 1-3. Eddie will be 2-2. Now, the last matchup of the week is going to be Just in Time, my boy Daniel, as well as Rock Nation Shavat, who is 2-1. After going 0-1, he has turned it around, has won 2 straight games in week 2 and week 3. Daniel has got off to a hot start. He is the remaining undefeated team. He's the only remaining undefeated team in our league. And let's go check out the rosters. So for Daniel, he has Kirk Cousins, Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris as his 2 running backs. His wide receivers consist of Tyler Boyd and Justin Jefferson. His tight end is TJ Hawkinson, and his 2 flex spots consist of Deontay Johnson and Brandon Cooks, with the Bills defense and Greg Zuerlein. For Shabbat, he has Matthew Stafford as his quarterback, Ezekiel Elliott and DeAndre Swift as his running backs. His wide receivers are Cooper Kupp and Antonio Brown. His tight end is Mike Gesicki, and his 2 flex spots are going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Darnell Mooney. And his defense is the Ravens with kicker Matt Gay. Now, this one's a kind of a simple one for me, only because I love the depth that Daniel has at essentially every single spot, especially wide receiver. As you can see, he has Tyler Boyd, who already got off to a hot start, Justin Jefferson, as well as Deontay Johnson and Brandon Cooks, all 3 of these players should foster a lot of targets, and that makes it easy for me to go ahead and go for Daniel, who will be 4-0 going into week number 5. Now that rounds it out for my list of, or rather the matchups for the week. So let me go ahead and get out of this real quick. But all right, so that does it. Thank you so much once again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. And please would be highly appreciative if you hit that like button as well as the subscribe. Now, if you have any, you know what? I did have some TikTok questions I want to get to, but while you're at it, go ahead and send over any questions that you have. I got some questions I wanted to actually answer for some people that DM'd me. And here we go. Sorry, my volume's all messed up. So here we go.
Matchup luck.
So here we go. So Q&A, here we go. So what do I think of Brandon Ayuk going into week number 4? So here's the thing. I love Brandon Ayuk. He got a lot of the target share in week number 3. I believe that will continue. They're going up against, they went up against the Packers in week. Who are they playing actually? I'm over here forgetting. Let me see. I have, so yeah, they're going up against Seattle. So Brandon Ayuk is going to go up against a secondary that is formidable. That is not that formidable. That should be vulnerable, and I believe that will bode well for him. So if you're Brandon Ayuk, consider him in your flex spot. I can get it if you're still a little risk averse with him. If you're a little worried about how he's going to do, but I believe that Brandon Ayuk still is getting I still think, because watch, look. Here's the thing: the value and the talent is still there. Last year, he showed us why he was the player that he was. I mean, he was so phenomenal, being used in so many different ways, and I believe that just doesn't go away. Even though there's been a slow start to the season, I believe that Brandon Ayuk showed us a glimpse of what he can do in week 3, and that will continue, being that there is a favorable matchup with the Seattle Seahawks. So go ahead and go with Brandon Ayuk and be confident with him being in your flex spot in week number 4. Now, the next question I have here is from, hold on, where is it? Here you go. Who do you think what do you expect from Najee Harris after having a phenomenal volume performance in week number 3? Well, it's going to continue. We're seeing that, unfortunately, with Big Ben right now. His arm is completely shot. That offense is essentially all Najee Harris. Big Ben isn't throwing it deep right now, and I believe that Najee Harris will continue to do that and will continue to carry this offense, pun intended, and I expect him to continue to do well in week number 4. So go ahead and trust Najee Harris. I believe that the talent will continue to win out there, and that's really essentially what it all boils down to, really, is just that. So here we go. Let's go back quickly to the show breakdown. So we already went over some of the injury news. I went over the players I love in week number 4. I also went over a bold prediction that I had, which was, of course, Taylor Heineke. And then, of course, we also went over the league head-to-head previews for the 100 League, and we just did a quick Q&A. Now, the last one is for those of you that are 0-3. So you still haven't won a game yet in the 2021 season. I get it. It's frustrating. You feel like giving up. You feel like dropping your players. You feel like making every which trade to blow everything up. But here's one thing I got to tell you. The season is still not lost. Things can turn around. Stay active. Stay after trades. And here's the thing. Here's a pointer that I'll give you. If you're looking to really build your team from the ground up once again in season, the best thing I could tell you is when making trades, don't try to swing for the fences with one trade. Make small things here and there. So for instance, in one of my leagues, I had a weakness in my running back depth. So instead of just trying to swing for the fences for a top tier running back, I was looking for a running back that can maybe add value to me in my flex spot. So I made a trade, went to my bench, went to my roster, went to see, okay, which player would be able to add value to my opponent who I'm looking to make a trade with. And I saw that he was a little bit weak in his wide receivers. So I made an offer by saying, hey man, I could really use a solid running back to back up some of my main guys. What do you think about me sending you this wide receiver? So then that way you have some value as well. And guess what? He bought it. And I'm giving you this example because I've made trades in the past where I was maybe 1-3, 1-4, and one or two trades really can make a whole season turn around for you. So keep after it. Do not give up. It's okay if you currently haven't got a win yet. Listen, so many things can happen. Don't give up just yet. Hope is still alive, and I believe in you. If you have any questions, need any help, follow me on all my social media platforms. I am all about giving you as much value as possible to help you out, and I encourage you, reach me on Twitter at 100fantasyfb. Also, if you want to hit me up personally, I'm at IvanH__. And as we wind down, thank you so much for making it to the very end of this video. If you found value in it, I highly encourage you to hit the like button as well as the subscribe and push notification as we go into the weekend. Best of luck to you, and as always, keep it 100.